Hey y'all, welcome to the Moving with Millennials podcast with your favorite millennial realtors.
We are 4 top producing agents in the DFW area, and we are ready to share the good, bad, and the real life of real estate.
Whether you're thinking about getting into real estate, already an agent, or just curious about what your agent really does, join us.
Tune in every Wednesday to see what it's really like to be on this side of the transaction.
Guys, welcome back. We're so excited you're here. This time, let's introduce ourselves. So I'm Maggie.
I'm Jake.
I'm Mariana.
And I'm Brandie.
And so welcome.
I think in today's market, it's definitely, our market's on fire.
Mm-hmm.
And so
yeah.
I kind of hear a little chitter chatter of like, oh my gosh, properties are selling so easily, I can do it myself.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And
you can, but
You could.
Right.
You're not allowed to.
And if you do, I think the main thing to know is that you're just likely leaving money on the table. And so we're going to jump into different ways, like really why have an agent? Even right now, when you can sell your home, with 32 offers, why it's so important to have an agent and really, how we'll help you. So I think we're just going to jump right into that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's start into that. So let's just talk about you're wanting to sell your house. So of course, the number one thing that you're probably going to focus on is the price, right? So where you're finding your price, you're looking online, you're looking at, rhymes with willow. I'm not going to say, but you know what I'm talking about. You're looking there at the Zestimate and all that kind of stuff. And while we understand these online prices are there, what you need to know, especially in the state of Texas, is we are in a non-disclosure state, meaning that when a property sells and a home sells at a sold price, there's no way that you're going to figure out what that sold price actually is without talking to a real estate agent. So it's not,
it's not accurate.
Is it accurate?
Willow.
So it uses algorithms to run math and kind of estimate what your house could sell for based on what other homes were listed for. But especially now, homes are selling for above list price. I think the average right now is 109% of list price.
Mm-hmm.
However, also on that note, some people are getting aggressive and pricing really high, and then those still end up sitting. So It's important to know where your home should actually be priced, and that's where agents, like she was saying, if that's not public information, we get that through our multiple listing service. So agents are the only ones that can pull true comps for your property.
Right.
Not just that.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, not just that, but Willow has never been inside of your house.
I was about to say
They don't know what the, updates you've made. They don't know the condition. There's more to it than just price per square foot or here's your value, right? Because of this house sold at this price. We make adjustments based on what your house actually looks like.
Maggie, why don't you kind of talk about when you're getting ready to price a home, what are the steps you take?
Yeah, so I look at, recent sales within the last, 3 to 6 months. If I cannot find one, within the last few months, the sooner or the most recent of sales, the better. What is that? I look at square footage. So within 20%, 25% of the subject property square footage, I look at updates, condition of the property, if it's 1 or 2 story. I'm
already lost in this list. So if you are not, I'm not really because I do it myself, but so for the average listener, who's looking at this, it's a lot of steps. So keep going.
Correct,
I want them to realize that it's not just saying that house down the street sold for $400 to mine. I think mine's nicer than my neighbors. And have a bigger backyard and have a pool, so I'm gonna sell for $450.
Right.
So it's kind of keep going. So after you've done age within 20 to 25% of the size. Updates. What else? 1 or 2
story, because that makes a difference. It's more expensive to build a house with that's 2 stories. Pool, no pool, any sort of add-ons. Like if it's a two car garage versus 1 car garage, I'll make that adjustment.
Lot size and location.
Lot size, corner lots, that makes a big difference.
So before, I want to also point out, before we're even actually getting into helping you sell your house, we're also doing all this background of finding you the right price. It's not just we walk in and say, hey, your house is worth this dollar amount. We're doing research on your house. We're gathering information about your home, and then we're coming back and we're doing adjustments. So that in itself, how long does it take for y'all to run your comps, would you say? And comps, by the way, are your comparable properties.
It depends. If it's a major rehab, it takes me a little bit longer if there's no comps, just because I have to do those adjustments. But it doesn't take that long.
I don't know. I think for me, I would say about an hour. I look at, it also depends, like Maggie said, where it is, market-wise. So certain areas, have more turnover. So you're going to have a lot of comps readily available. And some, I mean, we've both struggled with some listings recently. There's not as many comparables that have sold recently. So you're either having to go back further, which then means you have to adjust, but then double adjust for appreciation and value right now, which is like a whole nother thing. Or you have to go expand the market area, which then again, then you may get an adjustment for different schools and things like that.
Right.
So, I think it depends on the property, but I would say I spend a good hour or so prepping, and that's just for me to come up with a range.
Right.
And I think you and I talked about this the other day, and maybe even Brandie, it's like if you show up to a property, if an agent shows up to your house for the very first time to meet you and evaluate your property and they give you a price that day, they're not really doing their job, I would say. Because I can come up with a range after I've seen your property and walk through it. I then going to go back and tighten that up. But I'm not going to do that on the spot because, again, it's math,
Exactly.
It's all those things that we've said, like, I'm never going to use that math growing up, and we get to use it. So,
so I guess it does take a while to do those adjustments. I thought you meant like just like the quick zoom in.
The actual adjustments and whatnot.
Yeah, finding the comps doesn't take long.
And sometimes if you don't have those comps, we have resources that we call and talk to old appraisers, or we talk to people who we're not just on our computer. We're talking back and forth to people in the industry to help us price your house not only fairly, but to make sure that it's going to sell fast and for the most.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think right now with the hot market, because you put a house on the market, it gets multiple offers, it's most likely going to sell over asking. And that's a whole other thing we'll talk about. Like demand right now is huge when it comes to selling your house. But it's more than that, where we're even kind of looking at actives, and we're also kind of looking at pendings right now too.
Yes.
Not just our sold. So it depends on the market. Everything's different. It's not set in stone.
Yes, I just talked with a listing agent that I have a listing coming up in that same neighborhood, and the house is a perfect comp. It's a major rehab, and I was able to talk with her because it's pending. It has not sold yet, but
Find out kind of
super
where
helpful,
it is. Yeah.
And find out if they made it through appraisal. Because that's another part as we're talking to agents, figuring out like, hey, you have that listing down the street, it's maybe a good comp, and asking, I've done that certainly as well. And I'll admit, like it hit me on one reason. Because they said, yep, we're under contract at X amount of dollars. And I thought, great, that's going to align my listing for this amount. Well, their appraisal came through short. And so they ended up selling drastically below that. Mine had just gone to the market and we immediately had to adjust right behind.
Yeah.
But that was in a neighborhood that didn't really have enough comps to really set a value off of it, just off of recent comps. So it's a tricky game. There's a science to it. But especially right now with the market being so volatile and kind of so fluid, the science is a little, I guess a little more flexible right now too.
Yeah, this is where the relationships that we talked about in a previous podcast, like making sure that you're always good and friendly with the other realtors, because that helps you when you can call someone who's not even sold yet and say, hey, you're pending, can you help me through this listing?
Yes.
Right.
So. Yes.
And also on top of that, I think it's important to know, like, there's 3 different types of values for your home, by the way. You've got your assessed value, which is what the taxes are assessed off of for the counties. You have your market value. Market values, literally the definition is what a buyer is willing to pay for your house and what a seller is willing to sell for the house. And then you have your assessed value, and the assessed value is that appraised. Sorry. Then you have your appraised value, and that is that one appraiser's opinion. So you can have 5 different appraisers come in and give you 5 different appraised values. So on knowing all of that is also a huge part of why hiring a real estate agent, because we learned this over, year, 2 years, 3 years, 8 years of being in real estate, where you're getting that knowledge too, and most consumers don't understand a lot of this. So that is a huge benefit working with the real estate agent.
Absolutely. And talking about market value, assessed value, and appraised value, you always want your assessed value as low as possible. So sometimes people say, well, like, oh, but I think I can sell it for this because my assessed value is really high. And sometimes it's that you haven't protested that and that number has creeped up too high.
Right.
So you can't always go off of that, but your goal should always be, and if you need help fighting that, talk to an agent. Because we can help you through that process. But that number should be low. Market value, like she said, it's what people are willing to pay for. The appraised value, you want that as close to market, like you want that at market value, and that's another way where agents, we help get it there. That's one of our, like when I have a listing or a buyer, either one, my job is to say, when is the appraiser going to be there and what can I provide? So I think we're all really good about doing that, providing appraisal packets to the appraiser. And so no matter which side of the transaction I'm on, if I'm on the buyer side, I tend to prefer the listing agent to do it. I think it's on their onus to prove why they've priced it this way. So I always give the listing agent the first chance, like, hey, are you going to do an appraisal packet? And if they don't, then fine, I'll do it. I'm happy to do it to make sure that my buyer gets this property. But so that's another thing that's another reason realtor is important, is because you yourself are not going to have access to the comparables to prove that value, whereas we can. So I think that kind of pulls up another thing is our value right now is making sure that a contract is going to close. Contracts can fall through for, is it 32 different reasons?
Well, a buyer, so many reasons why a contract can fall through, but a buyer
has 32 outs.
Has 32 outs, ways that they can get out of the contract, but there's so many more reasons why a contract falls out. But knowing those, like, most people don't know that there are 32 ways that a buyer can back out of your contract. Because when you sell a house, buyers kind of are in control once you're under contract. A seller, guess how many ways they can get out of a contract?
2.
There's 2 ways they can get out of a contract. Jake, which ways can they get out of a contract?
The easiest for them is default of the buyer. So if the buyer defaults, then the listing,
means the buyer would have to do something for you to get out. And
and the second one is, go ahead.
No earnest.
Oh, you said 2. I knew there was 1.
Not delivering the earnest money, right?
Yeah, so it's like that's.
So again, really the one way.
That's the same thing.
So the one way, there's really one way that a buyer or seller can get out of the contract, and that's if the buyer is in default. That is literally the only way a buyer can get out of a contract. Or if, the buyer wants to terminate their contract because they've got 35 different ways. But again, the buyer's in control of that, obviously, situation.
I recently had a buyer, the seller terminated at the very end because they couldn't come up with the funds. Like they were. Well, and again, that's on the buyers. Buyers again are in that control that if they can't come up with the funds, of course the seller can't. The seller couldn't. This is an investment property.
They still have to sell the house, unfortunately.
No, they could not come up with the funds. We terminated.
Buyer. So at that point, it could have gone to mediation. Could have gone. But at that point, but the buyer got the earnest money back. So at that point, anyways, there's a lot of different ways, and it's as frazzling as it sounds for everyone involved. And so I think that's the point is we help lower the likelihood of it falling through. And if you don't use an agent to sell your home, just know that the buyer's agent on the other side, if they're a good agent, they know the 32 ways to get out of it. So you may have a really perfect contract on your hands that something just upsets that buyer or doesn't look right to them, or you don't know how to negotiate that, and they will find an excuse to walk away, and their agent will be able to get them out of it, and then you're back on the market.
So let's talk about negotiations. So we're also really good to help with negotiations. This is a price through all of the, can't think of the word now. Inspections, all of the, everything they want to ask for you to pay for through inspections.
So we don't just negotiate price. We negotiate on the repair request. We negotiate
there's 3 points really that we are negotiating. One is the initial contract. Second is any repairs, and then third is potentially appraisal or lender requested repairs, which would be kind of around the same period. So at those 3 points, we are trying to make sure that we're getting the best for our client, whether or not we represent the buyer or the seller. So of course, having an agent on your behalf as you're working with someone that's professionally trained to negotiate against you, and this is not your background. Let's say you're a school teacher, or you have a small business, but it has nothing to do with this type of transaction. You're it's David and Goliath at that point.
And every time we run scenarios by each other, we're always like, well, first of all, who do you represent? Because that makes a big difference on how you're going to negotiate, right? So, and kind of coming off of that, I know I'm going to just say it. I've had contracts where I'm representing the buyer and they are purchasing a for sale by owner, and it's nothing I'm not being mean to the seller or anything like that, but when I negotiate, instead of having to negotiate with another trained agent that knows how to now negotiate, I'm negotiating directly with the seller. And at that point, I can tell, I'm kind of in the driver's seat at this point, because some of the things I'm negotiating, I realized that if that agent, and I'm not twisting her to the point, my intention is not to make it unfair to the point, but it's little things like, hey, if you would have gone on the market just so you know, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, for sell by owner, you probably would have had a better offer price than what my buyers are willing to give you. But if you're willing to sell it at that price to my buyer and my buyer's willing to pay it, that's fair market value at that point. But because of this current market, I mean, let's be real, they could have had like 10 different offers on this house and it would have driven that price up. Of course, I'm not going to tell them that, and I don't have to tell them that because I'm representing the buyer. So just that alone, having that person, because if she had a listing agent, or the for sell by owners have listing agents, that listing agent is going to advise their client, their seller, and say, hey, you need to put this on the market because you're going to get more. So
yes, and I think that's all fantastic. I think the other thing I thought of just while you were talking about that, it kind of popped in my head, the stat. I'm a numbers person, sorry.
That's okay,
I
give
think
it
the
to
stat
us.
is like 92% of buyers find their house through an MLS portal.
Oh, absolutely.
So if you're thinking, you know, it's as easy as putting a sign in the yard, that will get you some traffic. You know, the people that are driving through your neighborhood looking at other properties, you'll get some of that. But again, 92% of buyers find a property through the portal that their real estate agent has set up for them through the multiple listing service.
Yeah.
So that's how they're going to find properties. So if you don't have access to that, you're instantly not having access
You're
to.
losing out.
Yeah, you're losing access to the large amount of buyers that are out there.
Yeah, because let's get real. In this hot seller's market, almost no buyers want to navigate this on their own without a real estate agent.
No.
So they won't. And so for us to send them properties, and even though we are selling them, showing them some for sale by owners, as long as they're willing to work with an agent, at that point, you're missing out potentially on all these other buyers that could be looking at your house.
Right.
So that's super important.
Yes.
Let's talk about just like in general, like services we provide. Like, I know we're talking a lot about, you know, if you're trying to be a for sale by owner, like is one thing, but like just in general, like how do we help our sellers? Like maybe think of one, like, you know, of course we all do. Do we all do professional photography?
Yes.
Yes.
And that's something that is monumental.
I feel like that's very basic. Like you have to, like if you're working with an agent, and again, this is all opinion based, but if you're working with an agent who's not willing to do professional photography and you're, you know, they're not a discount, I guess we could say discount broker. Should we say that? I don't know. Like, let's get real, right?
I know, I'm just like sitting here because I'm like, I have a listing that has no professional photography. As you're like going off on this rant. So
but why? But explain why. Because your reasoning is a little different. I have definitely done I have definitely done non-professional photography, but it's an investment property.
Yes, that's
yes.
Yeah.
So this was price point, and myself and seller agreed that we were likely going to be selling to investors, and it made sense. Let's just get the iPhone photography done. And in all fairness, Maggie thought my photos were professional.
Yeah, they were.
Because I know how to edit in Lightroom. So, you know, I think that there's a time and place for non-professional photos.
Right.
But if you're the average for sale by owner that's out there and your home is in average or better condition, iPhone photos are not going to cut it. So of course, and a typical property, yes, absolutely. Interior photography, and a lot of times then even video walkthroughs or something like that.
Right.
So yes, I mean, I think it's one of those where a vast majority of the time it's professional, yes.
Yeah. And these photographers that we have know how to shoot the rooms. They have lenses, and things look bigger and they look prettier, and the lighting is perfect. So I think it gets more people into the house, which is what you want.
Right.
And then once they're in, you kind of hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah.
Right. So
Well,
yeah,
it's
so
showing
all-
it in its best light because, yeah, the goal is to bring as many buyers to the house. And then also, and I think even right now, people are like, well, it's a hot market. Like, any house is going to sell. I mean, I see some people put a house on the market with literally no photos. And guess what? It stays on the market for 30 days. And I'm like, well, why do you think it's been on the market for 30 days
No one wants
if
to
you
see
have
it.
no photos?
Right.
Everything is a race right now. Everything is so fast paced. So if my clients see a home and it doesn't have a picture, they're just going to go to the next one because we don't want to waste time looking at ones that are not definitely going to be an option, because we may see 6 or 7 in one day and want to put offers out on 1 or 2 of them.
Yeah.
So we only have time to look at the ones that are true options, and the only way you get to become a true option is whether or not there's good photography.
So I
Yeah.
feel like sometimes people hide the house with just one picture.
Like,
I've seen, like,
yeah.
I swear they don't want to put pictures.
that's
in.
a
They're
great-
hoping that they just walk through the house because they're desperate. I've had that. And I told my clients, like, well, normally when there's only 1 or 2 pictures, it's because
the inside's not worth
well, that's
it.
a great point then, because if you see one photo or you see iPhone photos or something like that, automatically you're thinking, well, this probably is an investment property or something's wrong with it, and they don't want to show us the inside.
These bright green walls or
So it's definitely,
I see it a lot, or I have lately, on coming soon listings. Like it'll just be a few pictures,
Oh, absolutely.
and then I'll reach out to the agent, and they're like, "Okay, pictures are coming."
Right, they just haven't
Coming
gotten
soon.
it
Or
professional yet.
Yeah, they'll
Yeah.
put it on the MLS, which is even better.
Okay, so photography is basic, but other than that, like what else? Like I can go off and list some of the things that we're doing, but what's some
Yeah.
other things?
Staging for sure.
Yeah.
Virtual staging. What is the basic staging where they?
Just with your
Very
own
nice.
goods.
Yeah,
Light staging?
to help them take stuff out.
Merchandising.
Oh, decluttering.
Decluttering.
Yes, so part of it in that consultation is going in and helping you depersonalize, declutter. I call it pre-packing because you're eventually going to be packing everything in the house. You might as well pre-pack.
Absolutely.
So a lot of that is involved, like giving you our expertise opinion on that.
Going through, that even comes down to closet decluttering and things like that. It's better to have, again, we're professionals.
Counters.
We know what people are looking for. They want to see counter space. They want to see closet space. And then if they see super full closets and they think there's no storage, so we know those little tips and tricks, just like those kinds of small things that can turn buyers off. So as we're getting your listing ready, we know what people are looking for.
Right.
Yeah.
Space is what sells.
Yeah, so
And then,
photography, staging, and then I think, of course, the big one is marketing. And I think right now where that is important is pre-marketing. So before that listing even hits the market, trying to get as many people excited about it as possible. Not so that we can get offers before, because I'm not going to let any of my clients right now sell off market. Because as Mariana said, I don't want someone getting an offer and they really could have gotten more by going on the market. So no matter what, we can have 5 offers before we go live, and we're still going to go live on the market. But it's to drum up that excitement so that we can instantly say, multiple offers received, best and final by X day.
And there's certain ways that we have to do that. So some of us are in a lot of Facebook groups where we post coming soons, and
That's where those relationships come in.
Relationships come into hand. And even yesterday, I have a closing today, and I asked the listing agent, I said, "Do you have any more listings? Because I'd love to work with you." So that's when you just start talking, and everyone shares. Even if you're not with the same broker, everyone's helping everyone.
Absolutely. Yeah, all of mine before, as they're going live, I'm reaching out to my friends. Not before, because we can't do that, but as they go live, I tell my friends at other brokerages, "Hey, here's my new listing. Here's the information. Here's the MLS number. Who do you have for it?" And so I think that's really, really important.
Yeah,
And that's something you don't have on your own. You
No.
know,
Right.
you can
Yeah,
try
you don't have
Facebook
that
group,
network.
but you don't have the
exactly. The network, I know we have access to where we can get every real estate agent's email and we blast those out. So your house is being highlighted to all these agents before it's even on the market. The pre-coming soon stuff, like Brandie was saying, with Facebook ads.
So I do it.
We're really big, and you'll learn this, that we're really big with social media. It's kind of our thing.
We do a little bit.
Yeah, a little, but that is huge. I mean, a lot of people are looking or on social media, so they're looking there. So you want to be working. I personally believe that you should be working with an agent who is touching on that because it's important. Buyers are looking on social media for houses.
More than you think.
Oh yeah, for sure. But yeah, so marketing is really huge. We do an individual property website, so your listing's going to get its own website. Not only that, but you've got a text code writer, so we're blasting that text code writer.
What's a rider? I know what it is.
Okay.
Everyone else, obviously.
Well, a text code, and then the text code writer is what sits. So we put a sign in the yard, and there is a smaller sign that goes on top. That is the rider, and it may say different things for sale and all that kind of stuff. We actually do a text code writer, so they'll text modern 1 or modern 2, whatever the code is, to a number. They'll automatically, it's kind of like you have your property flyers outside of your house, right? But instead of, again, my explanation is, who's probably grabbing those flyers, right? Your neighbors are going there because they're wanting to know what the price is or whatever information. They're taking that flyer, they're crumbling it up, and they're throwing it away. Instead of doing that, we're using these text code writers to where they can get the exact same information as a flyer, because when they text the code to the number, it automatically gives them that property website. And then the best part is we are then now notified that, hey, this number just inquired about this house. So I can then reach out to that person and ask them, hey, do you have any questions? We'd love to set up a showing with you. So it's a little more aggressive approach. And so those are things that we're providing additionally to just, your normal.
And then open houses. We do
Open houses, which, I hear people say open houses, that I love the open houses for sellers. And if a seller's willing to do an open house, I mean, 100%. I mean, the more people an opportunity you give a buyer to walk into a house and see it. I've sold houses through open houses, so I think they are great opportunities for sellers.
Absolutely. Maggie, why don't you talk about why it's important to have an agent when we're looking at contract terms and talk about potentially how many addendums there can be in an offer.
Yeah.
You know, because
Get
it's
into
like,
that.
yeah, so
For sure.
you know, I think people are like, oh, you know, it's like I can look up that contract, I can get it online, I can read through it, it's super simple, you know. So I think, you know, kind of talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So there are so many terms that are important in the contract.
It's not just price.
Yeah, no, it's not. I mean, the amount put down, earnest money. Earnest money is like the check that goes to the title company. That's like your promise to purchase the property. It shows that you're serious.
And that's what, as a buyer, you risk if you leave or, you know, leave the transaction or cancel the transaction after a certain period of time and it doesn't fit under one of those ways that you can technically get out. You forfeit that money, so the seller potentially gets to keep it. So there's reasons why that can be higher or lower.
Right. So earnest, option fee, the type of financing, the close date. Let's see.
Closing costs, home warranty.
Yes, home warranty.
I mean, that's just
how
half
much-
of them probably,
Yeah.
or fourth of what can be negotiated.
Yeah. Let's see. A lease back, depending on, so if the seller needs a lease back, I'm going to make sure that buyer, there's a date in the lease back addendum. And if I'm representing the seller, I'm going to have that buyer's agent put an amount of days versus a date because
Right.
closings get extended all the time. And so I would want to protect the seller and make sure they do get the 30 full days and not just, you know, say it closes 5 days
Right.
later, it'd be 25 days. If I'm representing the buyer, I 100% will put the date.
Just the date.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see.
There's just
I
so
mean, there's
many.
so many
I mean,
things.
Yeah. So then potentially, so you've got the contract. So then with the contract, you've got a third-party financing
Yes.
addendum that's going to come through if it's a financed transaction. So you're always going to at least have those two. Then if there's any potential for a lease back, which means that all the parties are going to close, let's say on July 1st, but the seller is going to be able to stay until, you know, let's say 7 days, 30 days, whatever that is. That's called a lease back. There's a lease back form. Then there can be a form if it was built before a certain time.
1978.
1978 for the lead-based paint addendum.
HOA.
Then there could be an HOA addendum. Then I know I'm still forgetting at
There's a
least
million.
I mean,
Non-realty.
non-realty. So if you're
there's-
buying if the person wants to buy any part of your property that's not real estate property, let's say they want to buy your piano, that's my recent one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fun.
And then let's say that you
You
so
want to
then
keep the mineral rights.
mineral rights, or if you're wanting to waive your right to cancel due to an appraisal, full waiver, partial waiver, there's that one, which is really common right now, and it is one of the easiest forms for agents to mess up. So it's really easy for you to maybe, as a non-trained person, non-agent, to look at it and think it reads one way, and the agent may be interpreting it a totally different way. And then there was one more. Oh, and then if you own the property, but let's say that you currently have a lease on it, you have a tenant, then
That's
same thing.
new.
Then there would be an additional lease form for the new buyer to take over that lease or terminate it, and what those terms look like.
Or even
So-
like your security system lease.
yeah, so I think we're on like 9 or 10 addendums at that point, and that's not even all of them. So, but potentially you could get, I mean, I just submitted one the other day, that was the contract, and it was 5 addendums
Yeah.
that we
Yeah.
were submitting.
And
it
that's
was-
something once we take the job for you, we handle everything.
Yeah.
We don't have to worry about that or reading the fine print or understanding it because we've been trained and
Yeah.
educated on how to represent and negotiate and go
Right.
fill them out.
And we're here to explain that you know, you're listed at $350, that offer that says they're going to pay $400,000 but doesn't do X, Y, and Z, why that may not be as good as an offer that's $375, guaranteeing you $375 no matter what.
Right.
So there's so many different parts that go into it with, it's not just a bottom line, here's the number I'm paying. There's so many different creative parts. And again, all of us, when we work on the buyer's agent side, we're very creative knowing that we're representing the buyers, and we make
We
sure
would
that
represent the buyer.
we
so
interpret
it's their
and
best
rewrite it
interest.
in their best interest. So just know that, I mean, it really is, you're on two opposite sides of the transaction. They're going to do what's best for their client. So you have to know that we then representing you, instead of being a for sale by owner, we're making sure that we're closing all those loopholes that they're trying to leave open for their clients.
Yeah.
We're changing all those dates where they're trying to be creative with it so their client gets a little extra time here or there. We're tidying all of that up for you.
Absolutely.
I think another thing we're doing behind the scenes is making sure their financing is going through too.
Oh, gosh.
We're making
Yeah.
sure that they can close on time and
Like the type of financing, depending on the house, like, you know, if it has a hole in the roof, that can't be a VA.
or
It
an
can't go
eviction.
VA unless it's fixed. So a
Yeah.
seller might, for sale by owner, might not know that. And
Yeah. So then even moving past like the contract, like Brandie was saying, so now you have this contract, what are you going to do with it? Like,
Right.
do you know who even needs a copy of this contract?
right, yeah. Good point.
I mean,
Yeah.
I say this
And where do
like,
you put it? Yeah.
yeah, I say this with love, but it's like, it's really funny to me where it's like, okay, you think you can do this, and then you don't even know, like, okay, who gets it? No,
Right.
what do you do?
There's so
This
many
is-
people involved in a transaction.
Yeah,
Not even considering survey and title, which is
Uh-huh.
like a whole nother can of worms that people
Mm-hmm.
non-real estate trained don't know what those two things are. So then like T47.
Yeah.
Right.
All
Because
of
if
these
you don't
specialty
buy a
terms.
survey-
So each of these specialty terms, like we know them like the back of our hands, but like if you get a contract and it's missing some portion of it, it's like that is just going to delay and mess things up and give people.
or it could cost you money because now if you don't give it within a survey and a T47 within the number of days
You've
allowed,
got to pay for a new
you're
one,
paying
even
for
if
it.
you've got it, even if you've got it in hand.
right?
You're still paying for a new one, depending on how they wrote the contract.
Yeah. So really, and that's part of what we provide too, is we're not just getting your house sold and under contract. At that point, there's so many things. It takes 30 days on average once especially if you're working with financing, from the minute you execute a contract to closing. So what's happening during that 30 days? So
That's when we're working more so. We definitely work on the
Yes.
front end. It's the front end portion is easier right now. I mean, let's just all be honest about that. It's easier, and then in recent
it's like
history,
the fun really starts at that point.
yes.
Right.
So getting your home ready to sell, all that, that's a little bit easier now than it was maybe 18 months ago. Homes are selling quicker.
Right.
But right now, transactions are chaos. Like
Yes.
from contract to close.
Running through
Now, I mean, it's like, yeah, jumping through rings of fire.
Yeah.
And that's where that's where you're getting your bang for your buck, is because we're the ones jumping through those rings
Right.
of fire while juggling plates and on our nose and hands. So it's what it feels
Exactly.
like.
Because most of our sellers are working full time and working on moving and have kids and children. So, and I wanted to touch base and go back maybe a step. But once they do get all of, as your listing agent, once we do have all of offers in hand, we put together an Excel spreadsheet with all of the
Mhm.
important facts of the contract that you wouldn't understand if you didn't have us. So not only do we explain every contract that you receive and help you walk through that, we help you decide. Obviously, they decide the best contract they want to go with, but we put them in this Excel sheet to help them walk through it.
Actual
That way they
comparison.
that way they
And
understand and see which offer really is the best, and
Yeah.
talk about not just price and
Yeah, and Jay kind of said like you're or maybe Brandie, I'm like getting confused who said this, but you're in the process of moving, you're working, you're doing the things. I think you just said that. So it's like there's so many things that you're doing. And I personally think that the selling side is so much more emotional than the buy side, because the buy side is exciting when you're buying things like that. You may be selling for, there's so many reasons why you could sell, and you may be, and most sellers are happy that, you know, the home's sold and all this kind of stuff, but it's also very emotional. I mean, this is maybe where you your kids grew up. This is where you and your husband had your first, well, I was gonna say first kiss, but I don't know why that would.
Wow.
But maybe that's where you guys found out you're having your first baby, and it's like, that's just, it's an exciting, or it's an emotional time because you have all these memories in this home. So our job also as real estate agents is kind of taking some of that emotion out of it, taking that stress out of it, because you have a sounding board, you have someone who's taking care of it for you, so you don't have to worry about all these missed things, because that's what we're doing. I mean, I want to say 40 hours a week, but we're doing this like 60 hours a week or more, where we're making sure things are happening, and we tell you, okay, here's what you need to know. And I think that's also why there's a misconception of like, we don't do as much as they think that we're worth, kind of thing.
Oh, because we don't tell them everything we
'Cause
do.
we don't even tell you everything we do. You
We're
want
the
us to
filter.
tell you.
We're the filter.
You don't know, you don't know some of the stuff we deal with other agents, and we purposely don't want to tell you that because we want this to be a great experience for you. We want to take that stress off of you. We want you to worry about what you need to worry about, and we got the rest of it. So,
I mean, I'm sure
emotions.
we've all had those moments where it's like we're handling something. It's like you are the duck, like you're sitting pretty above the water, and your feet are like kicking like crazy
Yes.
underneath because you're like, my client cannot realize this until I've got it taken care of. Because you know it's something you can get taken care of, it's not that we're hiding anything from our clients. It's just that sometimes there's those things where it's like, let me get this fixed, and then I'll tell you that there was an issue and we already
Once
have a
I
solution.
fix it, exactly.
Yes.
Oh,
I'm not going to bring you the problem. I'm going to bring you,
Yes.
here's the problem already fixed. We're done.
Yeah.
We're moving on. Here's the next step.
I will.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will not bring in a client on something until I know what's happening with
Right.
all
Done.
the pieces.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
Yeah.
Which takes
Especially when it
time.
comes to like closings.
Yeah.
Oh, we can talk about that.
And that's the other thing is like scheduling your closing and working with the title company and all that kind of stuff. Like that's something we're doing every single day.
Yeah.
And we have people, we have a team that helps us get through that too. So you would be doing it by yourself when you could hire us, which is really hiring like 15 people to help you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Even knowing when to shut off your utilities. I mean, there's just so many
Yeah.
little. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm thinking of like my checklist. So I think we all probably have some version of it. But
Move out
so I've got a checklist that I have for buyers and for sellers, and it's just to be able to go down that and know where you are in the transaction, what you're doing, what's next, what's coming up, and so I think that's just so helpful.
Oh yeah,
For
if we
sure.
have like kind of we call it contract to close, like what that looks like on our end, and it probably has at least 50 different checklist items at least.
Yeah.
And those are just like the standard. That's not even including like the things that get thrown our way. Like there's so many.
Right.
I mean, every transaction is completely different. There's no like, there's no easy transaction or there's no like exactly the same transactions. Everything's different, but something gets thrown our way. A buyer loses their job. Okay, how do we handle that? A buyer, you know, they end up. I had a
I'm not
buyer.
laughing because it's funny. I'm laughing because it's the stuff we deal with. Is sometimes you're just like,
One of the
oh my god, like
Did this really
So one of
happen?
the new agents in our market center just told me the other day she went to go show a house and the client's car broke down after the first showing. She had to jump the cable or use jumper cables to start it. They had to
Imagine.
reschedule and then she had to take the client and then the next day he needed help with something and she's calling me like, is this normal? And I'm like,
there's no normal.
unfortunately, it is normal to be unnormal. Like, yes, we deal with the stuff. We go pick up the dog poop if it
Yeah.
needs to be picked up. It's like we do all
We
these
play with
things.
the kids while you guys are signing
Yeah.
contracts because we want to serve you in every way that we can. So I think it's just we are wearing 700 hats
Yes.
Yeah.
every single minute of the day.
Absolutely.
And
So-
the beauty of it is it's our full-time job where you can continue to work your full-time job so that you can pay for the next house that we're going to help you find.
They're probably listening to this and going, why would you want to do that? I love it when a client tells me like I could never do what you do. And it's like, and I know it sounds really silly because I love what I do. We all love what we do. And I love the fact that not just anybody can kind of do it. Like it's one of those, it's a very
It's
unique
stunning.
trade. But yeah, I mean, we deal with a lot of the stuff and we do it with a smile on our face.
For
And
sure.
this is our full time
And then
job.
we-
I think
And then we
that's
cry at night. Like,
We drink a lot of
Or in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or at lunch in our car, or wherever else we need to.
I love it. We need to
We
make
drink
a
a lot
list
and
of just
cry a lot.
all the crazy transactions.
oh
Yes.
my goodness.
Like,
We can
I
tell
have-
the stories.
Have you guys? I have a funny. So I sold my parents' house. It was the longest house they ever lived in, and they wanted to sell it. But my dad now tells my children like they don't live in Texas because mommy sold their house.
Oh,
no.
gosh.
You are
my-
making me the bad person.
Yeah.
Dad. Like you wanted to sell your house, but he's always like, well, if your mom would have sold the house, like we'd still be here. Like,
Oh my god.
Wow.
Thanks, Dad.
thanks,
And
Dad.
then if you didn't sell his
Yeah.
house, you
Yeah.
would have
Yeah.
yeah.
We're still here.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Sometimes
it's so
working
funny.
with family too, it's interesting.
Oh my gosh,
It's just
it's
much
so
different.
Yeah.
but-
Yeah. For sure.
Anyways, okay, what else? What else do we provide? What other things would they want to know about how we can help them with selling their home? I mean, I think that like
That's
goes over a lot of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you guys have questions, again, just let us know. You may say like, hey, do you handle this? And we may not have talked about it because we probably do. But there's so many things that we do.
We're here and we're always here for our clients and to answer calls at 10 p.m. or 7 a.m. and
Yeah.
I think the better thing, we're also here for people that are not our clients. I mean, I
Yeah.
answer questions on Instagram that are people buying in other parts of
Oh,
the
absolutely.
area. Or, like, hey, I'm buying in Austin. I'm like, great, I know your agent or whatever, So, and even it's just, or people that are thinking about what are the next steps. So we're always here to answer questions in general. I think that's something that's really big about all of us. We just love kind of the educational side of it, knowing what you should be doing and how you should be doing it.
Yeah, and if you are thinking about selling, like shameless plug, right? If you are thinking about selling, reach out to one of us. You know one of us. That's why you're listening to this podcast, maybe. No, if you want the real negotiator, we should do like a negotiation.
Oh my gosh.
podcast.
I will say please use a realtor instead of Open Door or any of the
Oh,
other
gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
like
Any iBuyers, well, even iBuyers, I just helped the seller. We closed this week. He wanted to work with an iBuyer, but he felt very like he didn't want to be taken advantage of. He still wanted someone who represented him on his behalf, and he paid me a commission. I'm proud to say that because I was like, look, he understood that there's value with representation, and he didn't know the contracts, and I helped him with the iBuyer. So, and we can do that. We can absolutely help that. Depends on your goal, but again, I did advise him, he knew he could probably make more if he put it on the market, but his goal was convenience over the money, and that sometimes happens too. And we have an iBuyer program. So if you guys, I don't think we talk about that enough, but we do have an iBuyer program where if you do want someone just to give you an offer, we can absolutely arrange for that too.
Not only that, but I think most of us, actually probably every single one of us, has at least one, if not more, investors that we work with constantly that are always looking for properties. So there are ways to, if convenience or time are your motivations over profit, that's totally fine. We can still help with that. We can still facilitate it and still get you to the right person.
And right now we have, I could give you a list of 100 buyers that are ready to buy a house, and they're willing to help you stay in the home or work something out where you can stay in the home a little bit longer. Again, it's all about convenience. If that's the thing that you want. So reach out to us. If you are thinking about selling your house, let us know. We'll be happy to set up a consultation, talk to you personally one-on-one about your home, get you the value, talk about how we offer value and everything else. And yeah,
absolutely.
Perfect.
All right.
That's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
Talk to you guys next time.
Bye, guys.